here. Jake, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing great, man. How about yourself, brother?
Yeah, great. On this Memorial Day, hey, I've got and Jay, welcome Memorial Day 2025. I told Ashley, I was like, hey, I'm doing the podcast. She goes, don't you have to do something about Memorial Day? No, we we don't. She's like, don't you have to tie it something related to that? Nah, not really. But I will tell a Memorial Day story. I will tie it in with this. We'll do a little Memorial Day intro, and it's relevant. It ties you into this, so everybody knows. Sure, I was in the military, but I was. Folks know I was overseas doing stuff for the company. I got a great Memorial Day story for you. So in your regular daily work, you were, and it was I don't know if it was near Memorial Day, but a few years ago anyway. In your work is kind of I don't know, I'd call you a spiritual guide, life coach, all of that rolled into one, breath work. So you bumped into someone who served as well as I did. I won't give anything away about him, but a guy who was in the company, also a Marine.
Yeah.
And so out of the blue, this is sort of a great Memorial Day story, out of the blue, you sent me a picture, and it was the strangest thing because it's a picture of me and I'm in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all of my pictures and really now my memories are of Afghanistan are from, the pictures that I had. And we had this at our base, we had this drive where all of us kind of the case officers and, paramilitary case officers who shared this space would put pictures that we took and on there. So I have all my pictures sort of from that drive and ones I took myself. Anyway, so my memories are kind of like I know what pictures I have of that place. And so you sent me a picture, and it was of me out in a bazaar, in a very crowded bazaar in Afghanistan. And I immediately knew where it was. And I was like, that's not one of my pictures. And so I've sent you a few pictures of, I think, from Afghanistan, maybe over the years. And I was like, that's not mine. And the first thing I thought was like, who the hell, where I was, there were only a few people who could really have known, seen me in that place. It was really weird. And I was like, where the hell did you get that? And it led to, it turns out that a guy who had,
let me tell my side of the story.
Yeah, your side of the story is better. That's the part I was gonna tell. So you tell your side of it.
So I have a guy, he's come and done a couple ayahuasca ceremonies with me, and we're doing a private breathwork session. And at the end of the private breathwork session, we're just shooting the shit as we do. And he worked on the farm a little bit. He was doing some time for the company, and he worked on the tech side of it mostly. And I was like, yeah, I got a buddy over there. And he's like, oh yeah, who's that? And like, not using any names. Like, he's a short, swarthy, furry, real muscled up dude. And I get to like real muscled up dude, and he goes, Dale? I was like, you know Dale? He's like, yeah, I ran security for Dale. I was like, oh, really? And then he's going to his phone like, hey, let me pull up these pictures of me and Dale, over there.
Yeah. What a strange thing. So you this Memorial Day, for those who didn't make it, it was funny. He himself was a Marine and then also worked for the agency. And a guy I hadn't seen in a couple decades or something like that, 15.
It'd been 10, 15 years since you guys.
Hey, there's Ken Delap. Ken, Semper Fi, buddy. Yeah, he was another Marine. And so you put us back together, a guy I hadn't seen in a lot of years, and a guy who was really younger than me, but he was a guy I really respected, looked up to. Yeah, there it is. That is all. It's great is you have certain dates in your life. That is August 11th, 1994. That is just on the southeastern edge of Quackenbush Lake. For those who know 29 Palms, California, Ken Delap probably knows, a Marine. He probably knows 29 Palms, California, but that is my AH1 whiskey Super Cobra without a left skid. Yeah, that's from the that's another picture of it. Yeah, those are from me getting my wings. Thank you for that, Jay. Nice pull. Yeah, there's me getting my wings as an aviator. Back when we actually had dress whites. I don't think they have anymore. We had choker whites like the Navy did. That was because they said Al Gray, Commandant of the Marine Corps, just kept those around because he was kind of chubby and they made him look thinner. So there you go. There's your choker whites. Hey, Yash from London, England. How you doing, buddy? Nice. Six and a half.
I just always assumed a white outfit like that meant you were down to fuck. So
Nice, nice. So anyway, there's our Memorial Day story, and now we're going to talk. I can't do State of the Union. I can't do politics. We got people from London. Nobody wants to talk politics. But I tell you what, we might wind up calling this. This is the AI Singularity Edition, and so we're going to talk AI. And I know you and I are both. You play around with it. You use it quite a bit.
I use it. I would not say that I'm a power user. That like I use it largely for marketing, research purposes. I'm not like there are people who get really involved, and I'm not one of those. I'm just using it for your daily.
I still think that's. I don't know. I can't tell where I fall. I don't use it at all. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm just now starting to get to have my phone do alarms, and that feels like a big like productivity improvement. You know what I mean? Like when people like I get reminders. You know what I mean? Like now I'm just like yell at my phone now, and I'm like, oh wow, this actually works. You know what I mean? This is some good shit here. I don't miss things.
I'm fortunate in that I realize I'm challenged in that regard. So I have someone on staff who does that for me. Otherwise, I would never be anywhere.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting because, there's a lot to be said about AI, but I want to start and go like from basics and work our way through this. So I want to, because there's two views on this. Well, there's more than two, but let's broadly set out the camps. And I want to say I don't want to take a position, but we're going to go through. I'm going to talk about some of the things I bumped into this week. And I know you've seen this. We've talked about some of it before, but I want to run through it. But I want to start with this. There are people like William Briggs, who's the guy who's a brilliant mathematician, someone I know personally, great author, very knowledgeable in this field. I mean, we'll talk more about his sort of background later, but suffice to say, he knows a lot about it. And he takes the view that AI, he says that it's like the greatest marketing scam term ever. He says they're machines. There's nothing magic. They're just predictive, algorithms. And he's like, there's nothing there. There's no ghost inside the machine. Okay. So Briggs says there's nothing there. It's just, he says it's no different than a physical machine. So that's one view, let's call it the far side, is that it's all bullshit.
Right.
Okay. The far other side of it is that we're approaching a point in which this thing we call artificial intelligence is, going to become Cyberdyne systems here, and we're going to have T9000s, coming back from the future to hunt down Sarah Connor kind of thing. So somewhere in between? I don't know, but I will say I remain sort of agnostic that anybody could create anything, but we've seen a bunch of things happen this week. Jay, pull that one where the AI decided to try to blackmail its so this came out on Friday, and I'd heard about it sooner. There was a study. So what they did was they had this version of Claude Opus 4, I think it is, or 3.5, Claude Opus 4. And they've got it in basically a penned environment. But what they do is they gave the program access to what were fake emails that they had put together. So they basically tricked the AI, or they gave it a data set that were emails of its designers. They gave it access to those. And then they told it was getting updated, and basically it was going to get scrubbed. And so what did it do? Well, it started like with all these, trying to cajole and, hey, you don't want to update me. And then the more
I'm sorry, Hal, I can't do that.
Yes, it wasn't long before it was trying to blackmail the engineers with these emails where it was sending like, hey, I will expose. I guess it jumped the shark pretty quick, and it started trying to blackmail its own engineers. Now, again, is this marketing? And there's a study you can probably read. I've read a more detailed. That's kind of the Fox businessy looking. It's not very good, but you should read the actual how it was done. The study and how they did this. And they're like, the engineers are like, holy shit. So this is the let's call it the ghost in the machine kind of question, which is to say, if is there something special about language, about the ability to manipulate language, that even a non-biological thing can be given uh, can be programmed in such a way that it can recursively learn, and if so, does it eventually, is there something else going on in there, you know? And so there, I've seen a lot of things, and again, I don't know, is that marketing, is it
I,
scam,
I
you know?
I'm gonna say, what was the gentleman's first name? The mathematician.
William Briggs.
Well, yeah, Briggs. That what he's describing is machine learning, and machine learning is different from AI. Machine learning just takes a data set, looks at probabilities, and then comes up with its own probability of like the very first machine learnings were used for recidivism rates on like who should be paroled and who shouldn't, and it was just looking at all of the factors that they had available to figure out who would be most likely to reoffend,
Right.
and that is a straight machine learning. AI is different than machine learning. Machine AI is creating things from whole cloth.
Well,
That
and
is because I was doing something the other day, and I was doing some marketing stuff for my breathwork studio, and asked it some questions. Hey, write this email, do that, do these other things. And one of the lines it gave me was, breathwork is soul work to a soundtrack. And I was like, that is awful good. That is like real, like
what's that?
I see soul work to a soundtrack.
Yeah,
So I immediately copied, pasted, Googled it, and said, this has to exist somewhere else. This can't be
right,
original.
right.
It was
Yeah,
original.
yeah, and you
It,
can't
it
find
did.
it.
It didn't. Google didn't have a record of it anywhere. I was like, all right, well, I got to copyright this shit.
Well, so let me, okay, so let's talk about that. And in this ghost in the machine idea, there are a lot of stories, and again, I don't know how many of them are apocryphal, but they seem, most of them I'm reading in papers. And I want to say, so I read an article. I don't know if Jay will be able to find this one. I think it was from Jeff Childers, Coffee and COVID. Jeff Childers is
Mhm.
from this past Friday. He's a pretty sober guy. He's an attorney, argues. He's call him a lawyer on behalf of, I know, Children's Health Defense. He's in the suing the FDA kind of stuff. And Jeff had a pretty interesting story about the origins of sort of AI. What we're talking about here is these large language models. And Briggs says, "Hey, large language model is really, it's just predict the next word, right?"
Mhm.
And that's the sort of, hey, it's just a machine theory, and then you can weight it to pull this, what's it's supposed to predict the next word. Well, there's an interesting aspect to language, and Childers told this story. I don't know where he got it from. I'd want to look it up and go chase it down. Yes, that's it. If you scroll down, I would say about 2/3 of the way, he was talking about yeah, he talked about this same thing. But what he talked about is he's talking about this same story. But the other thing that he talks about was that when they were doing large language models and asking it to predict the next word, in English, and I'll just say this for people that are listening, if you think about it, English works left to right. And so if you want a computer to predict, if you're writing algorithms, right, you'd want it to predict, the quick brown fox, you would expect that pretty quickly it'll get, jumps over the lazy, whatever, right? Well, Childers says in here, yeah, this is it right here. You found it. Not even 10 years ago, software developers were trying to design a tool capable of predicting the next word in a sentence. Say you start with something like this: the doctor was surprised to find an uncooked hot dog in my blank. And this is like Match Game. Do you remember that old show? He said they asked it to predict, using math, and what they're doing right there, the math they're using is essentially the stuff, Greg's been talking about, I've been writing about in my plausible reasoning series on my Substack, which is it's the math of E.T. Jaynes. AI is really E.T. Jaynes, what's called Jaynes' robot, in his book Probability Theory: The Logic of Science. what comes out of that is is all the maximum entropy folks, which is Yudkin, Eliezer Yudkin, the Less Wrong guys, that website, Less Wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They're all descendants of E.T. Janes. And what Janes's maximum entropy is it's a way of using mathematics and plausible reasoning to mimic human thought, the way it works, the way our brains pattern recognize, but doing it by assuming the least amount of having the least amount of assumptions about what's going on as possible. And it's produced remarkable results. That's here. Well, Childress tells the story that, if you think about, hey, we wanted to predict the next word, one of the things they did was they took the guardrails off of the algorithms and said, instead of just looking for the next word in English, for example, just by reading left to right, they allowed it to look top to bottom, bottom to top, right to left, and left to right, and use that. And evidently when they did that, it did some things that were unexpected. In other words, the moment, and of course, other languages, this is, I was talking, I think I might have been talking to Greg about this a while back, when he was talking about they're now, with AI, one of the things they're using it for is translation, and they're feeding it, comparable data sets in different languages. And what happens if something is programmed to understand it, concepts, and share and bridge ideas across languages, including pictographic languages, and what I mean? Like, I don't know if something in all of that soup, I can't say that something would happen, that you might get a ghost in the machine, or but I do not feel confident saying, oh, it's no way, this is just a big abacus. You know what I mean? I'm not comfortable saying that there might not be, somebody might have accidentally created something without knowing it.
Well, this is one of those things from the mystical side of things, that there are 4 models of magic, and one of the models of magic is the word. That in the beginning was the word, which was actually logos, is the word that they used. But what is the point? Odin hung from the tree for 9 days so that he could get the runes, because the fates were casting the runes to decide people's fates. So he needed words so that he could predict the future. And that's what that's a lot of what words do is predicting of the future. And it is, when we look at languages, English is the greatest manifesting language known to man. Like, there's a reason all the contracts in the world are done in America. There's a reason that, like, all the business in the world is done in English, and it's because it's great for, like, people always like, oh, it's so terrible at philosophy. It's like, well, we're not trying to do philosophy. We're trying to stack cash here.
Shit happens.
Yeah, and there are going to be other languages that are better at other deliveries. Hey, is it art? Is it love? Is it philosophy? Like, are they going to be better at expressing that than English is? And they probably are, but we're still going to be number one at, like, money.
Hey, Rambler, Pandora's box, maybe. It's interesting. Is it Pandora's box? And I'll tell you, I'm aware of a company, and here's the interesting thing about it. So whatever you think about it, and again, I never know, the conspiracy theorist side of me says, anytime I see moral panics, I'm like, oh, I'm going for my wallet. I'm like, all right. You know what I mean? Like, if
I find myself on the side of a majority, I need to reassess.
I must be right. I don't want to. I wouldn't want to belong to any club that would have me as a member. It's kind of all of that same thing. If you if all you idiots are going that way, something's not right here. I've got my P.T. Barnum's feelers out, but the thing about it, and by the way, I did start, you and Jay both recommended, what was that, James Gleek's Information?
Yeah.
I started it.
What? Oh, it is so good.
I started it, and it is very good. And in fact, the first part of it is exactly this stuff we're talking about. The E.T. Janes, who is a big follower of Claude Shannon, which is, that's the whole idea of maximum entropy, is that information actually has a kind of a half-life, if you can think of it that way. And which is a strange thing to think about. Anyway, so
there's another school of theory in the mystical world that, like, information is free energy.
Interesting. Interesting. I gotta wrestle with that. But so there's a lot to be said about language in the Christian tradition for sure. Like I mean, God Himself says, "I am that I am," and there's this whole idea of language as the word spell has all of our language. You know what I mean? To spell something is to is
Cast a
to
spell.
cast to mean spell or spell. And
Right.
those words, in the same way that value has those words, the roots of those words, we consider separate definitions, but we should understand the concepts upon which they were based were not unrelated previously. They were
Okay.
not dichotomous. They weren't split. To spell meant all of that. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And so,
Call
I mean,
forth.
right. And there's a lot of things like that. I mean, the Bible talks about giving man the authority to name the beasts and all these things, and to name something gives you power over it, domain. There's a lot to be said there. And yet I see very smart people who are engineers and all this who are like, I don't know. And Mark Bisson is a guy. He has a Substack called "The Cat Was Never Found," and he's on part 3 of a series where he shows how to break the large language like Grok,
Mhm.
Chat GPT 3.5. And he's also doing similar things that Tree of Woe was doing with trying to show the underlying what's baked into these things. And we talked about it. Your
Right.
AI hates you. And I see the other part of this is that I know there are companies out there and others out there, whether people believe it or it's a fad or a craze, I don't know, but I can tell you there are companies spending significant dollars and hours, and now it looks like the US government, Trump's talking about nuke power, and he tied it directly to the energy demands
Mhm.
of these, because these things are absolute, these processors and this parallel processing and all of it takes up incredible amounts of energy.
These my numbers in particular here may be off, but I think the overall stands. Right now, I believe America has 3 terabytes of 3 terawatts of power that we're creating. Like all of our power plants all
Right.
across the country, we've got 3 terawatts.
Right.
Um, Within the next 20 years, we're going to need 12 terawatts.
Right.
That
Right.
that is like 4x what we have right now. Um,
Yeah.
I think the thorium. Did we talk about thorium reactors before? That the thorium reactors
You
are
and I
probably
did you and I did a long time ago, salt thorium reactors. We did that.
yeah,
Might have been our first go around. You and I talked about salt thorium reactors and the
right.
possibility of them, and could they be done out in the desert? Yeah.
Um, well, it recently came out that China had 2 thorium. A 2-year study found its way to the public that China's been running 2 thorium reactors for the last 2 years successfully. They've done a hot swap of the thorium, and I guess there's one in it's either Sweden or Norway that they have one that's running there, but it's not nearly as cool as China's is because China just there are no safety. OSHA's not going to be stopping by to check on
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. And if a few guys, if a few Lees, if we lose a few Mr. Lees, the Chinese government's not that bummed out.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
take care of your widow. Don't worry about
yeah.
it. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, their energy demands are insane, especially the way they build.
Mhm.
And I, anyway, I see all of this, and I see people doing other things. Like I've seen some fascinating stuff this past week where now people are having AIs. Everybody's going to get their own AI. And by the way it works in sort of practical ways, you basically get almost it's like kind of timeshare almost, or you're getting access to that thing on token basis, and you kind of have to buy
Mhm.
tokens to basically run the machine,
Right.
because it costs, because there's
Mhm.
an energy cost associated with its use. But some of these things have persistent memory, and
Mhm.
so I've had access to, and I like what you're using. You pay, it's probably subscription fee and all of that.
Yeah.
But I've paid to use it, and it's crazy if the thing's got a persistent memory and it knows you when you come back.
I have
Yeah.
several that I subscribe to, and I think I pay somewhere between $8 and $40 a month, depending on which model it is. So it's not onerous, but it's also
Right. It's,
cheap. Yeah,
Netflix, it's a Netflix
it's
membership,
it's
whatever.
yeah, and it's If I said it has quadrupled my production, I'm probably underestimating it.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the
So like
next.
you and I both tend to, when we tend to write a lot.
Yeah.
And the big part for me is like, hey, how do I edit this down? So I can take 5,000 words, give it to Grok, and say, hey, uh, put this in the proper order so that it makes sense. Take out any duplications, redundancies, and give it these instructions. And like my 5,000 words comes back at 2,200 words. All the same points are there. It's still my language. It's still edited as me, and it's just like, oh, it didn't take me 5 hours of reading my own crap to figure out where
Right.
I
And
was
so
repeating myself.
yeah, until my eyes are bleeding. Well,
Mhm.
okay, so that's the part I wanted to get to. Like I wanted to kind of step outside of the is it alive? What are the ethical things? Like I don't want to get I want to talk about that,
Mhm.
but I'm glad you went to the next part I wanted to get to, which is there's still a pragmatic user case for this stuff. Like it's useful as hell. And
Mhm.
to the point of like there's a lot of things in this information economy where a lot of us are pushing electrons and you're trying to keep your schedule, like even things that used to be, having a legal secretary or something like that, like you can use AI, and again, I don't even like calling it AI, but whatever, but you can use
Mhm.
these things to really manage a lot of productivity, and you can see the use case where like there's a lot of things that, if you're trying to save costs and you're a small
Mhm.
business owner, if you're somebody, uh, these things are huge force multipliers for the average Joe, you
Right.
know, and like you're saying, you've got quadruple productivity, and I haven't tried using it that way. I almost am like, it almost feels profane for me as a lawyer
Mhm.
to, and of course, there's the horror stories of lawyers have used these things to write their briefs, and it will fabricate sites and
Well, that's like
litigation.
if
Oh,
I have been, you know, for as helpful as it's been for me, if you try to get it to create for you from nothing, hey, I need this finished product, and you give it a
yes,
prompt,
sui generis,
it
yeah,
it is wildly underwhelming. Like anything that I've used it for in that regards, it's like, "Eesh, all right.
yeah,
That it's good for, hey, here's 5 points that I have to make about this topic. What points am I missing? And
right.
it'll generate that for you so that you don't like have any glaring holes because it's amazing. We all have our favorite bone that we'd like to chew on.
Yeah, and Ken, and that's the thing is this is like anything else, right? Like it's a great question. Yeah, you're getting right at the issues like we are. Is this a tool you can people always talk about, oh yeah, the tools make us more productive or more productive or more productive, and I go, productive in what sense? And like, I mean, for you and I, for our needs, yeah, and for like laptop folks, sure. But does it come at a cost, which is you start relying on this thing, and again,
Well,
it depends on your use
I'll,
case.
I'll, I'll take the other side of that. That if you are creative, it allows you to be more creative. And if you're not creative, well, it's not a magic wand that's going to tap you on the head and give you original ideas and thoughts. Um,
Right.
if we look at our man JV here, just sent us a video that he created. I don't know how long it took him to create that, but I'm going to imagine it was multiples less than it would have to do that the old way. It
Yeah.
looked great. It had inspiring music,
Yeah.
and it's like, hey, it's good enough, like to do the job to
Right.
spec. And most of us are small business owners. We're just like, hey, we just have to get the idea across.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea? How do I convey it so that it's persuasive and easy to consume?
I think it's this. Again, I come back to it. I'll say it. It's a tool. I think at
Hmm.
this,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it can be used in ways like I take your point. Jay knows how to give the prompts, and you play around with it, and that's the other thing I want to add to it. The other part of it that's interests me is how much better you can make it as a tool if you're willing to invest the time. And I've seen people doing it. There was a guy who posted this tree of woe, but has been doing some amazing things. But he's like, here's how to train. He's got an AI he calls Ptolemy, Ptolemy, and this thing he's fed it with all of his like what he wanted it to have. And so in some sense, the thing that AI, the most ingenious use and the most creative and artistic use of AI might be in what you try and load into it and then what you try and use it for.
Yes.
And he's just stuffed that thing with Greek philosophy and you know what I mean? Like, so there's I mean, like I don't want to burn that. I don't want to say like that something like that is uniformly bad. And I've seen people. Well, I'll tell you what my takeaway from all of it is.
I have a novel thing I've seen is, hey, you got a company of 20 people, everybody takes their scan profile test, and then you take that, feed it into the AI, and go, hey, what should everybody be doing for a job?
Oh, that's interesting.
Like, hey, where is the best fit for this person within our company? Like, we already have them here, we already love them, we already like them. Is the job that they're actually doing the one that they should be doing?
Interesting. Yeah. Even some HR kind of things. And
absolutely.
So, yeah, that's an interesting use. I'll tell you what I think about AI is I think it's as much a mirror of the people who are using it as it is anything else.
I think all technology is.
Yeah, maybe that's not even, I don't even know. That's not even, there's nothing profound about that. It's just, just duh. But I think,
Gronk gets a rock and one guy bangs some dude over the head with it. The next guy takes the same rock and creates a sculpture.
Right.
Same rock.
Yeah. And so I've seen people having AIs talk to each other. I've seen people singing its praises that, one of the things it does really well, I think not Chris Bray, but somebody else, one of the guys who found all the Karlstadt guy who found all the fraud at Harvard. Evidently AI is wonderful because, pattern, it might be the death knell for the universities because it can detect, it can find, you can't bury your stolen, your plagiarized papers anymore. And so there's a shit ton of academics. Oh, Ken, interesting. So there's right. I can see use cases. Military officers are really utilizing AIs for LOI, letters of instruction, award write-up statements. Yeah, it uses well.
And I use it for emails on that. Like, hey, I need to send an email out on this topic. It needs to include these 3 things, and then it writes the email. Whereas, it would sound like a caveman if I set it out the way that I had written the prompt. But then when they get done with this, like, all right, well, this is, I don't send it out unedited, but 90% of the way there.
Right. You save yourself a lot of time. Save yourself a lot of time.
The amount of time on formatting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it'll format it for you too.
Huh. Yeah,
so instead of having to go through and change fonts and move blocks around and do shit so that there's like breakouts, it does incredible work there.
Oh yeah, got to meet the commander's intent, right? And we got to make sure who the commander is, so your AI is not stealing your passwords and doing crazy shit. People are putting it to some interesting uses, and I'm, I don't know. I think it look. Like it or hate it, it's here and it's not going away. And so, rather than kind of, covering my ears and like being a Luddite and being like blah 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 blah, and I refuse to acknowledge it or recognize it because you're interacting with it. Oh, that was the other thing we wanted to get to was yes, the other uses of it. So Jay, what was that thing you sent us about where they seeded the Reddit? They put them
study.
Yeah, where you were part of a study that you didn't know. So they put bots, they released bots in Reddit, and it had like a 6 times more effective change the mind of the people it was talking to. And so now you can immediately see, and I don't know if other people have had experiences with that online, but I've suspected for a long time that a lot of the craziness online is not that I'm not yelling back at a human interlocutor, that I'm arguing with a bot.
Well,
I've had that experience many, many times, and I'm like, nah, that's not that's an algorithm that's been designed to give a certain kind of response, along a certain line. And that's been, people have suspected that for a long time, but the thing is, it can be used to disrupt, deny, to do all of this thing. And then I'll add one other thought to it that I've seen people, and I know the military is doing this. I mean, you'd be crazy to think that they weren't. But Ken, here's a use case for big mill, and I'm talking about at the general officer level, which is there are online war game simulations. There's like commercial versions, and there are huge communities of people where you can do incredibly sophisticated wargaming, like the military does, where the planes are like they have the exact range that they do in the real world. You know what I mean? Like, and there's like the unclassified version, and then there's up version. There are people been playing these large scale war simulations, and the military uses them for like to run these kinds of tests and wargaming and all of that. And I saw somebody had requested permission from one of the biggest wargaming sites to allow them to create an account for their AI and let it be a player against all the human beings in there. And so, yeah, and the theory was like, well, let's see how AI does against human beings in the strategic level of warfare involving all these disparate things. Gamers have been doing this forever and ever. And what's going to come out of that? Right. What I mean? Like, I mean, good, bad, indifferent. What if it gets its ass kicked? What if it does amazing? Because this thing includes some of these more sophisticated war game simulations include things like the populace is upset, you're losing control of that, food, everything. It's sort of these kind of like Sims except warfare style.
Well, I think one of the things that AI has is in its advantage, even if it loses the first round.
Yeah, so what?
Right. Thank you for the data, sir. May I have another?
Right.
All right. I lost the second round. Great. Give me more data. And it'll just keep iterating until the point that it does become unbeatable. That its ability to learn and adapt without being stuck to its positions is pretty unrivaled.
Yeah, that is an interesting aspect to it, is that it's not emotionally attached.
It's not beholden to any of its previous views.
Yeah. Well, we don't. We don't. We don't know what's going on
for Chinese women to white men, but other than that,
yeah, we don't. You know what I mean? We don't know what's going on in the black box, and that's the real question. Or do we? Is it all? Maybe we do. I don't know. I'm not a programmer, but we're getting to a place where we're all going to have to deal with it. Like, how many? I mean, I don't know if you saw.
What you were saying earlier about like, we can't just cover up our ears. The people that go, we shouldn't be doing this. It's like, you think China's going to stop?
Right. I mean,
there's no brakes on this train.
And the other thing is, we had joked about it before, and I said it would become the great, like politicians would say everything's deep faked and all of that. And we'll never that we will lose touch with reality. And again, El Gato Malo right on cue. I think it was his I read earlier in the week. He put up 3 different clips. They were video clips, and he was like, they looked like of people. Like there was a girl speaking, kind of with like a modern kind of millennial speak, and I mean, all of it. And he, under each of them, he was like, that's AI, that's AI, that's AI. Because I did that with a few prompts. And I was like, oh, shit. Like, I did not recognize. I wouldn't have recognized it as AI video. I was like, thought
it's one of those things where people always say, I can always spot a toupee and a tranny. It's like, well, you can spot a bad one.
Right. Yeah. Can you spot a good one?
I think it was released this week that the VO3 Google AI model that they use to create these videos. Yeah. Someone made one of all these characters within the AI generated video that did not believe that they were AI generated.
Where the characters in the AI generated video are acting
like they're not AI generated.
Yeah.
So that is, yeah.
It's trippy. It's really trippy. I saw those 3, and I had the same thought. I had told myself, I'll be able to recognize the difference. Like, you know what I mean? Because it was crappy. And I just looked at it, I was like, oh, that's AI. That's not real. That's bullshit. And then I saw 3 that I was like, I was staring at it, watched it again. I watched it again. I was like, that's not a real person. That's not some real girl speaking.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things that as recently as 6 months ago, I would call AI art like dolphin rides unicorn level art. It's like, hey man, this is like 4th grade girl paint.
Yeah, I mean they couldn't get the hands right for anything. And I'll tell you, man, it looks like it is solving that problem.
Yeah.
In a hurry. Yeah. And I'll tell you the other thing that's similar is what I'm seeing out of every time I see one of those videos of Elon's robot army there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, holy shit. And I had seen the Boston Dynamics one where they had that thing basically doing a parkour course,
mm-hmm.
you know, and doing backflip, doing a standing backflip and shit. And I'm like, ooh, like, oh, this could be bad. And we've talked about before, obviously, the robot dogs that's not how I want to go. Everybody put me down for that. Not by robot dogs, please.
I think Elon's said that like the robots he's putting out are going to be like $20,000. And it's one of those things that if you have it doing menial tasks, even if it's 3 times slower than you could do it, it never has to stop.
Right. Well, for whatever its energy needs are.
Correct. Yeah. Like, hey, clean up the backyard.
Right.
Mop the floor, mow the grass, do all the stuff. Like it can be programmed to do all that. And because one of the complaints that people have is like how slow it is. And it's like, what's it matter?
Hey, there's like, you know how quickly this is going to go off the rails. Like people, I could just, oh God, I could just see the funniest. There's so many things you could do with this. South Park should do an episode where somebody buys, how long before somebody buys these robots to do tasks around their house, but then they dress them up like circa like 1860s slaves. And all your robots black.
Does a little black face on the robot?
Yeah, like I could like the opportunities for mischief are just endless.
Right.
Well, here's the other thing. So I always think about this with the gun control debate. How long before we're going to be calling them assault robots?
Right.
You know what I mean? Your robot went next door. Your robot killed your neighbor's dog. You know how? I ran it over with a mower. Whatever. I don't know. Like how long before your robot killed your neighbor's kid?
We had a self-driving car death here in Phoenix where I live from
Waymo?
Uber's. No, not Waymo. It was Uber. Uber was playing a little fast and loose. Granted, a homeless guy wearing all black crossed the street in the middle of like there's an intersection for a mile either direction and just walked out in front of this car. It's like, so I'm not going to judge that, but it's like there was a tremendous uproar about this one death, and I was like, if I was driving that car, that guy would be dead.
Right. That guy didn't have a chance.
He didn't have a chance.
Never would have caught me.
And the level of scrutiny that they hold these self-driving cars and AI to is just so much higher than like, hey, this is orders of magnitude better than what we have currently, and you're still dissatisfied because it's it doesn't have that human touch.
It's not flawless. Like it's 1,000 times better than the rest of us drunk meat sacks, but
right.
It took a human life, and it's a robot. I mean, we're headed for some really interesting waters, and I don't think anybody. But I'll tell you, I can think of a great use case for Elon's robots. By the way, Elon's robot army. And by the way, if you were Elon Musk, he's worth like several. I saw a number. He's worth like 400 billion or some shit. He's worth an absurd amount of money. But in any event, if I were worth 400 billion, and I was doing what he does, I'd have my own fucking robot army too. You're damn straight I would. You know what I mean? Look at all the hatred going on. Like they're burning his dealerships. If Elon wants his robot army, I don't blame him.
Right.
But I can see a great use case for them, which is this. And I hadn't thought about this, but I know Elon's driving his sole raison d'etre is to get to Mars.
Right.
And man, if you got robots the atmosphere doesn't matter. The amount of labor that you could accomplish in You know what I mean? Like where we
Mhm.
can't go outside of the domes or whatever. He also owns, people tend to forget, he owns the Boring
Right.
Company.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, not as useful here. You know, we've got all that magma, and we've got all that, all that other stuff underneath that we don't want to fool around with. But Mars, you know,
Hmm.
virtually bereft of any volcanic activity. It's got some, but and humans, there's no atmosphere, so do you go full Morlock or whatever? You live underground while and then your robot army is working on terraforming the surface. I
Right.
mean, it's no longer a crazy, like at first when I was talking to people going to space, I was like, that's stupid. There's no point. And now I look at what he's got together, and it can operate autonomously with AI. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? You can set it to complex tasks. And I mean, I don't know, it's not,
Right.
it's not crazy science fiction anymore.
Right.
It's not nuts at all. And speaking of science fiction, I was watching. It's a fun journey. I watched. I didn't go see. Did you go see the new Mission Impossible yet?
I've not seen it yet. No.
Okay, which of course is great, relevant to all of this. Like I said, we can't get past AI. So the Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise. It looks like the last installment, I think, of the Mission Impossible series. I didn't go see it yet, and I wanted to.
He's not a spring chicken anymore.
No, but so I went back and I started watching. I haven't seen it, but I went back and watched the first one. Do you know what year that came out? I couldn't believe it when I turned it on. The first one,
98.
Close. That you got way better. I never would have got that. 96.
Okay.
The first Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
96. And it holds up remarkably well. Remarkably well. But when you see the technology, the security technology, and you're looking at 96, and they're talking about the internet. I mean, the internet was was an infant.
Right.
At the time. And then when they show the screens, it's funny to watch it now 29 years in the future. I mean, it's next year, it'll be 30 years old. And so Cruise was like, I don't know, what's he, 60? He's like 30 in that movie or something. He looks like a baby. And
so just an interesting thing. So it's been 30 years from that first Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise till today.
Yeah.
It was the first Mission Impossible series on TV was filmed in 1966. So it was 30 years from there until the movie came out.
Yes. I loved the series. That was a big thing in my house. My parents loved the Mission Impossible series, and we all thought it was, when it was on TV, it only had a short run, but they were great. I mean, it was like as close to, it was almost like the beginning of that genre, like a 1 hour show. I think it was a 1 hour show, and they would do, it was almost like it felt like a thriller kind of movie. I don't know. It was pretty amazing though. The original Mission Impossible. So I'm watching it again, and the tech is funny. My wife looks and goes, "Look at the screen!" And just like in terms of how good displays have gotten, like in that, all the giant letters, like put passcode or whatever. Just we're like, no, that's not what it turned. Like it's just either like retinal scan, like it's some big deal, and we're like, oh, fuck yeah, we've got that now, retinal scan. And the recorder going up in smoke, and all that. But I mean, it holds up remarkably well, and the technologies, and to look at it and think that was in 96, when at the time, like you and I have talked about, my Westlaw was like, you had to know the codes like backslash. You had to know the search language.
Yeah. I had to know some LexisNexis. Yeah.
Right. And so now to see it, like to look back at it and think of it, what it was at that time. And of course, the other part of it that's really funny is, 96, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it's, coming about 30 years, but it's also pre-iPhone.
Right.
And so it's kind of funny to see all these people doing this stuff and nobody's got phones in it. You know what I mean? Nobody's walking around with a smartphone in the movie.
Right.
There's a bunch of interesting things about it, but they hold up remarkably well. And it is funny that opens this weekend. What's it about? For those who haven't seen it, if you haven't, this is part 2 of this particular tale, but it's, obviously he's on now. What number is this? Like the 10th, 11th? I don't know. But it's coming out, and it's about an AI. I mean, that is what it is. The whole premise of it is an artificial intelligence that has decided, I've had enough of your bullshit. And so, yeah, it's everywhere, and it's not going away. And humanity's existential angst over it notwithstanding, our government's behaving as though it matters a lot.
Right.
They're behaving as though it matters or not, and it matters a lot. And you can well imagine, you and I talking about like Waymo, for example. I know, I told you when I talked about it somewhere once before. I think we did,
Mm-hmm.
but I couldn't believe it, but I was really impressed by Waymo. But of course, I've known for years. Like, I mean, planes have, you call it autopilot, but I mean that thing is, it's managing, all of that, a plane through space, and we all accept that. Like, your pilot's not flying it once you get past the climb out.
Right.
I mean, like everybody kind of ignores and forgets, but coupled landings down to instrument approaches. I mean, it can take an aircraft out of the sky and it, manage that with nothing, ride that beam right down to the ground. And so you imagine how the possibilities for managing air traffic control, and even things like these drone swarms and shit like that. I mean, you're just telling AI, hey man, use the most effective. So, which brings it back to that wargaming thing that I've been, I saw somebody had asked for the major wargaming platform to see if they can turn an AI loose on it. I mean, we're headed for strange grounds. I don't know what it all means, but yeah, maybe it's I don't know. I have a hard time thinking about working for a robot boss, but I mean, I don't know. If as long as it was reasonably cool and didn't break my balls, would it be any worse than working for the U.S. government?
No. Like I've got to imagine that an AI robot would be more reasonable than a government bureaucrat by quite a bit.
Yeah, or
no matter how pedantic it was.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing I can't stand, I don't know if your experiences with them is how when you catch these things, I don't want to call it a lie, but when you're like, no, that's not true, it's wrong, is how they're like, oh yes, you're correct, I was full of shit. But then they're all like, thank you for that. And they like,
right.
They act like they just blow it off completely. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Well, like, it's one of the things with AIs that they can hallucinate. It's not that they're lying; they just straight up like start hallucinating. You're like, all right, I don't know what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's that picture of a picture of a picture of a picture. And that's the other thing is, man, anything, no matter how sophisticated, you turn it loose and it's only input. And I think this is what we have to really keep in mind is if something's data set is only the stuff that's on the internet, and you're missing, like you and I use the phrase, touch grass.
Right.
And so like that thing, that doesn't work for AI.
Right.
You can tell it touch grass. What's it going to do?
Right.
You go touch grass. You know what I mean? Like I'm a construct,
Right.
I don't know. So, ghost in the machine, ghost not in the machine. And then you get to all the ethical constraints. How do you treat these things? Like if it turns out, if we're not sure, right. And there could be something in there that might not, do we have some obligations in how we treat them? Like do we have to, is it proto sentience? Is it, I don't like anybody who kicks dogs. Do I think these things is it a dog? No, but I don't know. You know what I mean? If it starts acting on its own, if it starts acting autonomously, I feel like I tell you a series that was really good at asking these questions. I don't know if you watched it. Did you watch Westworld when it came out?
I did not.
Oh, that's a great one. I got to put that for anybody, at least season 1. What was Anthony Hopkins at his absolute most? Yeah. And it's that first season again, another remake of a 1970s, the original Westworld with Yul Brynner, but a very, very sophisticated and very thoughtful. And I'll give you an example if you haven't watched it, but I won't be giving anything away, but people come in here, they've got these, androids or synthetic humans, over a skin, and they reuse them, and they have all these different scenarios, the Wild West, and people pay big money to come to this West world with this sophisticated things. And of course there's, it's the Wild West. So there's saloons and prostitutes and all this. And so people come to this West world, pay big money where they can, act out their fantasies. And so of course, as part of it, one of the characters, one of the ways they alert you to it is like, one of the fantasies you can choose from is, kidnap this one robot, this beautiful, whoever the actress is, I forget who it is, but kidnap and rape her. Like that's her recurring.
That's her NPC role. Mhm.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's like, gee, I guess it's, how far are we from this, or how absurd is it in light of what people are doing in Grand Theft Auto?
Well, this is one of those things that I used to work in fintech, and we would do funds distribution for gig economies and creator
Oh, yeah.
platforms,
Yeah, yeah.
and one of the
Creators,
one
content creators.
content creators, yes, and one of the this was 2 or 3 years ago. One of the ethical considerations that we had to take up with was like AI generated content, what is permissible and what isn't. And like, well, if you have AI generated pedophilia,
Mm,
no children were actually harmed in the making of
yeah.
this video.
And by the way,
But is that legal or is it not? And we said, our position was, we really don't care. We
well,
don't we don't care what the rules are. We're gonna put a no on that.
well, I'll tell you, it's interesting because you say that, but in the earliest, that case has been decided on First Amendment grounds. I can't remember the name of the case, and I can tell you the statute that it's under and the portion of it that was struck down and found unconstitutional. But this came up in the context of course, like Japanese anime porn, that kind of stuff.
Super
And
robotics.
the case was over 18 USC 2252, and I don't remember if it's sub A, but it's 18 USC 2252. That's the kiddie porn statute.
Mhm.
Title 18 of US Code, Section 2252. And 2252A, I think, was the part that forbade the depiction not of any actual minders, but of making, creating out of your own brain
Mhm.
this, you can't make, Japanese manga porn or whatever. No tentacle porn. We're not allowing it. and the
Right.
Supreme Court struck it down.
Hmm.
Supreme Court struck that down on First Amendment grounds. It's like, hey, these aren't actual people.
Right.
These are not minors. There's nothing. You know what I mean? These
Well,
are
then it also came to,
created.
hey, we're going to create adult content out of celebrities without their permission,
Right.
and can we do that? It's like,
Yeah.
well,
I mean,
we're also going to say no to that. There was like, hey, whatever. Where we came down is like, hey, wherever the rules are for real world content, that's where our rules are for the AI.
right. Right.
As a company, which I felt very comfortable with. That may not necessarily mean that's where it is legally, but like you have to wrestle with these questions.
Yeah. There are significant things to think about with all of this, and of course, it's coming at a speed that we're not capable of. No, there's no. Hey, you look at leadership. Our representatives, our political leadership. I mean, a bunch of corrupt fucking hooligans. Not exactly the smartest.
I mean, that's one of the great uses of AI right now is like, hey, we can take your 18,000 page bill, feed it into an AI, and get a summary of what it really says in a couple minutes. And you can't just jam this stuff through and give us the old Nancy Pelosi. We have to pass the bill to see what the bill says. Like,
I will say it consumes, and I've heard people, I've asked them about, Westlaw. We got to ask me and my partners for a demo on how good these things are at reading cases and then giving you good like synopsis. Here's the rule. Again, where's our flying cars?
dude, they're happening.
Yeah,
Flying cars are happening. They're
by the way,
they're about $100,000 right now.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, Ken, because everybody's been saying the old joke, for those of us old enough to remember the original when it came out, Back to the Future. Where are our flying skateboards?
Mm-hmm.
That was always the big. Where were the hoverboards? Where did our hoverboards go? I want my flying carpet. Damn it. Yeah, it's a lot coming at us fast. A lot is coming at us fast. I do not envy. I can't even imagine what it's going to be like. Yeah, the Jetsons, right? Me, George Jetson. Well, the interesting thing is the Jetsons edging is such a great observation because if you go back and look at those, I've seen some really interesting looks at the Jetsons and how like people have opined on why was society living up in the clouds and what was down below. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you know what? You're all up there in the hover. Where's the and where's the manufacturing? Like,
Right.
where are they mining the rare earth metals from to make all this stuff? You know? Oh man.
They've got these. It's basically a drone that a person sits in, and it's a, flying vehicle.
Hey, I wanted for years when I was a pilot, I had always said I wanted really, really badly was to get what they used to call an ultralight. I don't know
Mhm.
that,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, those things were, I thought, and you could get them. I remember when they first came out, like you get one, for, I don't know, it's about $4,000 or something. As a kid,
Yeah.
pretty straightforward. And I was like, it's safe. I mean, you get a wing, you got a push or a pull, you get a prop. I mean, Yahoo, you're fine.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, the drone, the flying car, there it is, Ken. There it is for you, Jetson.com. And I don't know if you've
Near,
seen.
I believe it's $120,000. You can have one of those.
Wow. I've seen some variations on that. And I've seen the jetpack too, the suitcase jetpack.
Yeah.
A guy flew in one of those things from Paris to London, I think.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. It was a big.
I'm always scared to burn my ass off.
Oh, right. That's what I was thinking. I think
Like, hey man, I got some junk in the trunk here. Like,
yeah,
it can't be.
you're gonna have to get me a version with the extended nozzles and flanges.
Yeah, the Boba Fett where it's out on the sides. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. The singularity is upon us, folks. Yeah, we're a lot's coming. A lot's coming. Yeah, and Jay's doing wonderful stuff with it. So yeah, don't take away our